Pale Moon is a free and open-source web browser based on Mozilla Firefox, available for Linux, Windows, and Android, developed and distributed by Dutch developer MC Straver. Pale Moon is a fork of Firefox, retaining the fully customizable user interface as seen in the previous era of the Firefox browser, and focusing on the core tasks of web browsing. Version 26 will use new rendering engine Goanna fork of Gecko. Because it is a fork of Firefox, Pale Moon is compatible with most of the available Firefox extensions and plugins. Features: Pale Moon is a fork of the Firefox web browser, with a number of notable differences from its sibling, adds 64-bit computing support and hardware acceleration, uses a user interface similar to the one Firefox 28 and earlier used, exposes additional configuration options such as scrolling, status, and new features specific to this browser, functional status bar and more freedom in customization, offers a personalizable start page in cooperation with StartMe, supports Pale Moon exclusive extensions and themes, uses the IP API service instead of Google's for geolocation, uses DuckDuckGo instead of Google or Yahoo as the default search engine. Optimization Pale Moon on Microsoft Windows makes use of compiler optimizations by using the Microsoft C compiler's speed optimization, auto-parallelization, and auto-vectorization features, and targets NT6-based operating systems to increase performance of the browser. The resulting browser will not run on particularly old hardware as a result. Pale Moon on Linux makes use of the O3 switch in the GNU compiler collection. Like the Windows build, Pale Moon on Linux is stripped of older processor support and additional features not specifically serving web browsing. Further performance tuning is achieved by removing uncommonly used functions of Firefox, including disabling accessibility hardware features, parental controls and telemetry, and completely removing the crash reporter. User interface The user interface of Pale Moon since version 4.0 substantially differs from that of Firefox. The status bar was reinstated by the authors to keep the information provided by web applications and messages about the current state of the browser accessible without being intrusive and to contain other status element removed from the Firefox user interface, such as the web page or file download progress bars. Initially this was achieved by bundling an edited version of an open-source status bar extension, which became fully integrated into the browser core as of version 12. Pale Moon's tab bar sits directly above the web page display and below any toolbars, rather than utilizing Google Chrome's tabs on top design as Firefox did beginning with version 4. The developer also reordered UI controls with a goal to collect the control elements in the same place to improve the user experience from the usability point of view. Incompatibility with older hardware For a while, version 3X of the browser was maintained separately to provide support for older processors that don't support the SSE2 instruction set, which is required to run Pale Moon versions 4.0 and later. In August 2012, the lead developer announced the end of life for that legacy Pale Moon browser, citing dropped functionality, maturation of the next generation code and increasing difficulty for backport security patches. The mainline version of the browser no longer supports older hardware that is locked to Windows XP as an operating system, but an official, specialized, Atom Win XP and Atom Linux 32 builds are offered to close that gap. Versioning The browser followed Mozilla Firefox's rapid release schedule before 12.0 was released. Subsequent versions adhered to select versions of the Firefox browser, and eventually the ES24 version of Firefox, with continued additional independent development on top. The current versioning scheme of the browser is independent from other Mozilla-based browsers as the Pale Moon browser has broken its previous ties with the Firefox rapid release schedule and Firefox as a product. Android Pale Moon for Android was first released on August 3, 2014 as an APK on Pale Moon's own servers, beginning as version 24.7.1. Version 24.7.2 could be downloaded from either the Google Play Store or the Pale Moon servers. Although Pale Moon originally supported all devices running Gingerbread or later, the developer announced on November 7, 2014 that the minimum requirement would be Android 4.0 for the future versions. Pale Moon supports mobile Firefox extensions, but Firefox does not support mobile Pale Moon extensions. Pale Moon also uses Pale Moon Sync instead of Firefox Sync. The application is built upon the Gecko source code for the desktop version. On April 16, 2015, the Pale Moon-led developer announced that he was considering abandoning development of Pale Moon for Android. On May 8, 2015, it was officially announced that version 25.4.1 of Pale Moon for Android would be the last version developed by MC Straver, but he was hoping that members of the Pale Moon community would pick up the project and allow it to move forward. To this point, no developers have stepped forward in an effort to further develop the Android version of Pale Moon. You can view the most recent version on the Google Play Store or check out the release notes. License: like Firefox, Pale Moon's source code is released under the Mozilla Public License 2.0 except for parts relating to branding. Likewise, officially branded Pale Moon binaries may only be redistributed under certain conditions to ensure quality. The project's name and logo are trademarked and copyrighted by MC Straver, and cannot be used in, for example, third-party Firefox builds or other related products without the author's prior permission. References. External links, official website, summary of differences between Firefox stated by the official, IP API, geolocation services provider of Pale Moon, StartMe, supplier of Pale Moon's personalizable start page.